Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today on the topic of mother-son enmeshment, I wanted to talk about the importance that the role of the father plays. So very specifically, typically speaking, when there's mother-son enmeshment, there is an absent father figure in one way or another. So that father figure may be absent physically because he left the family and chose not to participate in raising the children, or maybe in the unfortunate circumstance that he passed, which is nobody's fault. Or it could be that the father is physically present, lives in the home, provides in other ways, financially, materially, physical protection, but is not emotionally available and emotionally present, strong emotional presence, either to the mother or to the child. And very specifically to the mother, which is what I want to address here in the video. So, motherhood, especially in the early stages of the child's life, is a very emotionally demanding and physically demanding process. That mother naturally fuses with the baby. The baby is developing inside of her body. Her nervous system becomes intricately intertwined with that baby's nervous system. And then in the early stages of life after birth as well, she's breastfeeding, she's constantly holding the baby. So there's a very visceral, hormonal, and neurological process that creates this emotional sensitivity to the child inside of the mother. And this is adaptive in many ways throughout our evolution because babies are very emotive beings. They don't have complex verbal reasoning or irrational reasoning. And they're very dependent and they're very needy. And so the mother needs to be able to sense into that child, to feel that child in order to be able to respond to its needs. So almost by nature, that mother's body becomes fused with that baby. Um, so there's enmeshment, the possibility for enmeshment is very, very high. So the role of the father is to provide emotionally for the mother, especially during those early stages of life and pregnancy, and to be an emotional presence, to ensure that she's filling her cup emotionally, so to speak. Now she needs also other sources, of course. The classic quote, "It takes a village to raise a child." That's absolutely true. The mother needs multiple adults, and so does the child. But the mother needs multiple adults that are emotionally available to her and providing for her emotional needs and helping her be emotionally nourished. Otherwise, she will become emotionally depleted, emotionally overburdened, and end up pulling from that child naturally. So if this is a process that happened in the mother's life and across multiple generations, she will have a natural inclination toward enmeshment and enmesh anyway. So the father plays a critical role, and when there's an absent father, emotionally or physically, that will exacerbate the enmeshment problem. It will become even more likely, there will be an even greater risk that that mother will become enmeshed with her child, and that will of course continue throughout the course of that child's life, all the way into adulthood, sometimes in later stages of life as well. So again, it's natural for the mother to be emotionally fused in the early stages of life, but development is an increasing process of autonomy and sort of separation at the nervous system level. This does not mean that we become disconnected and totally independent and not needing our attachment figures. We absolutely do, and attachment continues throughout the entire lifespan. That's absolutely healthy. We are an interdependent species, but it's natural to have a healthy degree of autonomy, to develop a healthy degree of emotional autonomy as well. And as childhood and adolescence and young adulthood unfolds, this natural separation, this natural differentiation occurs. When there is enmeshment, it doesn't. That's the issue, right? There's not the healthy balance between autonomy and attachment, individuality and connectedness. So the father plays a critical role in emotional provision, and when he's not there, there is a void. And that void obviously makes the mother child bond more emotionally intense. So, the father, if he's present, there's this triangle that gets created, and that diffuses and disperses the emotional attachment energy across several bonds. But when the father is absent, then only mother and child are left, and so the intensity of that bond is much higher. The emotional intensity of that bond is much higher. So that's the first role that the father has. The second role that he has is to model, boundaries and structure and healthy differentiated love, and to set healthy limits and draw loving lines with enmeshment patterns that he sees. And this is totally healthy process. This is a totally healthy behavior for a father to have. Again, he will have, of course, a natural emotional bond with his son. Men bond emotionally as well and hormonally with their infants, but he still will have that intensity of that bond is not as visceral as it is with the mother, because again, the mother grew the infant inside of her, the breastfeeding process. There's just naturally more emotional intensity in the mother-child bond than there is in the father-child bond. Even a father who's very, very close and has been very, very physically present and emotionally present for that child since before even conception. um, so he stands a little bit on the outside of that dyad. He forms the triangle, and he can be slightly more objective because he's looking from the outside at that attachment bond. And so he can draw loving lines with both the mother and the child. He can set boundaries with her in a loving way that acknowledges that her fusion and her intensity is coming from love and care, motherly love and care and nurturing. But he can say, honey, I know this is coming from love, and that's a beautiful thing, but I think he needs a little bit more autonomy in this particular area. I think we need to draw a line here. It's appropriate, for example, for him to sleep in our bed when, he's 6 months, when he's one, but it's not appropriate when he's 10, 12. It might be a little bit of a crude example, but you get the point, right? So drawing loving lines with the mother, um, and showing her where she may be enmeshing, because oftentimes mothers are not noticing this. They're emotionally fused. They're trying to be present mothers, and oftentimes mothers become very self-sacrificing and overgive to the point where they deplete themselves and then end up expecting something back. The relationship becomes conditional when you overgive. So drawing that line is, having someone there, another adult parental figure who's invested in the family system, um, to draw that line and to pull the two out of that enmeshment bond is really, really important. Likewise, he needs to draw healthy, loving lines with the son as well, because children will naturally enmesh with their parents as well if that energy is there. So, there's a natural stage of development where a child wants to marry their opposite sex parent. It's totally normal. The psyche is working things out. It's starting to understand and compartmentalize things. And so, when the son says to dad, let's say dad is giving mom a kiss or something, and the son tries to pull them away, and is experiencing jealousy, and says, no, I want to marry mom. For the father to sort of say, hey, that's beautiful, son, I understand, she's a wonderful lady, but you know what, she's daddy's wife, and dad, she has a husband already, and so you can't marry her. I know you love her, but you can't marry her, so you'll have to find your own wife one day. And of course, there's a moment of grief that child is going to go through, but it's healthy grief because it releases him and liberates him. And it internalizes something important in his psyche that says, he's his own man, and he's going to go find his own version of partnership, whatever that may look like, whatever his intimate life is meant to look like. He will channel that energy into his own life, and not feel responsible or tied to being that for his mom. He won't channel that romantic and that erotic energy that's natural in the psyche to toward his family system. He'll channel it to his own life and his own family system. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't continue to have attachment and connection, to our parents. We do. It's just in a different place. Okay, these are different types of energies that operate inside of us, and they need to be channeled. As development unfolds, they need to be channeled in very specific ways in order for us to be emotionally autonomous. So the father, needs to draw these types of lines with the son as well, and it liberates the son. So the son does not feel responsible for making his mother happy, for making his mother feel satisfied, he doesn't feel responsible for his mother's loneliness. He doesn't feel responsible for any conflict, any emotional conflict that unfolds in his parents' lives. So this boundary really helps the son understand, hey, look, mommy and daddy are a unit. I got her. You take care of your own life. We're here for you. You don't have to worry about us emotionally. And, that's not your role. And then, in sort of connected to that is the importance of the son, or I'm sorry, the father spending one-on-one time with the son and pulling the son away from the mother in certain bouts of time, right? Certain periods, temporary, of course, but pulling him away. And this has two purposes, or has several purposes, but three of the ones that I'll describe here is the first is it helps the mother because she needs that time to reconnect with herself as a separate being, to understand herself as a separate nervous system, to feel herself again outside of the visceral and hormonal sphere of the attachment bond with the infant. So this gives her time for herself to stabilize her sense of self again, to remember who she was before the identity of mother, and to then become also a differentiated and integrated being where she's both a mother and a wife, and she can give and self-sacrifice in the right moments, but she can also have other identities. She can be woman in the world, she can be friend, she can be neighbor, she can be artist, she can be professional, whatever it is that emotionally nourishes her. This gives her time to go and nurture those things and to fill her own cup emotionally. She can spend time with her girlfriends, with her mother, with her siblings, with her friends, by herself in nature, doing the hobbies she loves, artistic, or maybe just professionally, whatever makes her feel emotionally nourished outside of the role of mother and wife. And the second, purpose of this pulling the son away and spending one-on-one time with him is to also offer the son an additional parenting perspective, an additional set of lessons that the mother cannot provide. And so children need multiple adults in their lives passing on teachings and behaviors and knowledge and character values. So this one-on-one time with dad is super important because the dad will be modeling and setting an example, and passing down whatever it is that is unique to him and is unique to his particular, parent son or father son bond. So the child, the son will be absorbing this during this time, and that's very, very important for his development. And then I think the last purpose of this is for the father also to create that bond with the son, to feel more invested in him. The more time he spends, the more experiences he has with the son, the more commitment he makes to that one-on-one time, and to doing things with his son and to teaching his son things. The more invested he becomes, the more connected to his son he becomes, the more involved in his life he's going to want to be, and the better that is for the son, because the more the son is also going to feel like he has multiple adults in the world that have his back and that are going to be supportive attachment figures for him. So he feels trust, he feels secure in the world when he has these multiple bonds, not just the one-on-one with mom, not just, being a part of the family system, but he also has a one-on-one with dad. So he knows he has um, more people investing in him, and his development and his well-being and his actualization in life. So it's very important, all four of these things, all four of these points that I make, to sort of the development of the son and the prevention of mother-son enmeshment. So the issue with the mother-son enmeshment is not just that there's an intensity in that bond there, and that son, it feels bound to that mom. Beyond that is just that the son doesn't get the full spectrum of his emotional needs met, of his developmental needs yet met, so he doesn't get to become you know his the fullest expression of himself in the world. And that's really the biggest sort of deficit here, is that he's an incomplete being because he only had that one attachment bond, and it was with a high degree of intensity. So the healing process involves, of course, becoming aware. I always say that's the first part, is becoming aware, and very specifically becoming aware of the void or the gap that you had of that father, the missing father figure in your own psyche, because we internalize our parents. We internalize the mother archetype inside of our psyche, the father archetype inside of our psyche, and it's like we have these two parents kind of talking to us at all points in time as we live our lives and interact with the world, even after our parents pass, and or if we live far away from them, we continue enmeshed if the internalized version of them is not well resolved. So you have to be aware of what kind of mother you've internalized that's guiding you and parenting you on a day-to-day basis, and what kind of father you've internalized. And likely, if you're a mother enmeshed man, you've internalized a mother who's sort of overbearing and suffocating and extremely present, and you've internalized a father who's totally silent and absent. There's not a strong presence there of the father figure inside of your psyche. So the healing process involves becoming aware of that and then beginning to reparent yourself and upgrade those internalized figures. What would a healthy and mature and differentiated mother figure look like, and how can I upgrade that inside my psyche by beginning to be that for myself? And what would a healthy and differentiated and emotionally present and emotionally available father figure inside of my psyche look like, and how can I begin upgrading that, and reparenting myself to provide that for myself, so that my parental figures that are now guiding my psyche, that are embedded in my psyche and guiding my day-to-day life, are healthier, so that I can be healthier in the world. All right, guys, let me know what you thought of this video and of this concept, and I will see you in the next video.